right, folks, today is October 11, 2018. This edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered. Kanye West, Jim Brown go to the White House today with Donald Trump for what many are calling a bizarre, nonsensical, and crazy news conference in the Oval Office. I believe it deserves a proper deconstruction from a black man who understands facts and details. Trust me, you might want to tell your friends right now they should be tuning in, because what you're about to see, you're not going to see on MSNBC, on CNN, Fox News, or any other network. Trust me on that. Republicans continue their voter suppression efforts all across the country, especially in Georgia, yet folks are fighting back. We'll tell you exactly how you can do so. Also, the Supreme Court in the state of Washington, they have declared the death penalty unconstitutional for the simple reason that it's applied in a racist manner. We'll break it down with our panel as well. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, so I landed at IAD here in Virginia shortly after 2 p.m. My phone was blowing up with folks wanting me to comment on Kanye West's, some described as weird rant in the Oval Office with Jim Brown and Donald Trump. And so I then went to go take a look at what social media was saying, and folks and like crazy about all the things that he was saying, calling him crazy, deranged, out of his mind. And so then I began to look at the video, and I saw also what some other commentators were talking about, and I said, you know what? As opposed to falling for that very easy trap, I believe that it requires a proper deconstruction. Donald Trump, of course, touted Kanye West coming to the White House in his Make America Great Again red hat, as well as Jim Brown, because he thinks that he's been doing such amazing things for black people. And so I said, let's do this here. We're going to actually play all of it, but not continuously. So we're going to start, then we're going to stop, then start, then stop. Let's go ahead and start with the portion of it, and then you want to pay attention to what I'm about to break down. Go.
You know, people expect that if you're black, you have to be Democrat. I've had conversations that basically said that welfare is the reason why a lot of black people end up being Democrat. They say, you know, first of all, it's a limit to amount of jobs.
All right, so let's, before you even go any further, so he just said that what he has been told, that welfare is the reason a lot of black people are Democrats. First of all, if anybody understands history, African Americans were largely Republicans after the Emancipation Proclamation. And so you can look at the numbers. When you look at the African Americans who went into Congress, the U.S. House, as well as the U.S. Senate, they were black Republicans. And it didn't change really until Herbert Hoover came with the Lily White movement. Still had significant black support on the Republican side, but black folks were saying they were not strong enough when it came to civil rights. The shift really started with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Why? Because of New Deal programs, not welfare, New Deal programs that also greatly benefited white folks more than they did African Americans. Republicans still got a significant number of black support in 1952, 1956, even 1960, but yet even in the campaign in 1960 was Jackie Robinson, who said that he was lied to by Richard Nixon when it came to support of African Americans. Remember, it was John F. Kennedy who made the phone call to Coretta Scott King when Dr. King was jailed in Georgia. She did not know about his whereabouts. Jackie Robinson and others wanted Nixon to make the phone call, but he never did. And so even though Kennedy got significant black support, Nixon still picked up a significant portion of black support as well. So Kanye West is dead wrong. He lied. Black folks did not turn Democrat because of welfare. In fact, the most dramatic shift took place in 1964, when it was Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona who declared his opposition to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That is when it all changed. Not welfare, Kanye. It was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So on that point, whoever told you that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Press play.
And so the fathers lose the jobs and they say, we'll give you more money for having more kids in your home. And then we got rid of the mental health institutes in the 80s and the 90s, and the prison rates just shot up. And now you have shot.
Let's deconstruct that. Now, what Kanye West just said is that he was partially right there. So what happened was, of course, in the 1960s, what people don't want to talk about is that the significant number of unemployed black men in the 1960s. And so you had folks who were in two-parent households. Then he talked about the amount of money that was going to these mothers. First of all, that wasn't somehow just going to black people. What happened was federal regulators, members of Congress, wanted to provide benefits to women, to single women. Now, the problem is the way they wrote it is that if they got married, then the benefits would decrease. What they failed to factor in is you could get married, but what would happen if that man was unemployed? Why did you have significant unemployment rates of black men? Because of systemic racism in America that froze black men and black women out of a significant number of jobs. Now, many people would watch the Diane Carroll show Claudine, where she was, quote, hiding her man from folks when it came to getting benefits. That was the case. But trust me, this was not a federal policy that was targeting black people. It was a federal policy that represented any woman who received any benefits from the federal government. Now, Kanye is correct in terms of the jobs not being available. But the issue there was systemic racism as to why black folks were not getting those level of jobs. Hit play.
Iraq, what people call Chirac, which is actually our murder rate is going down by 20% every year. I just talked to the superintendent, met with Michael Sachs, that's Rom's right-hand man. So I think it's the bravery that helps you beat this game called life. You know, they tried to scare me to not wear this hat, my own friends, but this hat, it gives me power in a way. You know, my dad and my mom separated, so I didn't have a lot of male energy in my home. And also, I'm married to a family that, you know, not a lot of male energy going on. It's beautiful, though. But there's times where, you know, it's something about, you know, I love Hillary, I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could play catch with his son.
Stop right there.
It was something about when I put this hat on, and maybe...
Stop right there. All right, so here's the deal. He talked about, of course, what drove the prison population was the mental health cuts that took place in the 80s and 90s. You notice Kanye West made no mention of the devastating impact of crack cocaine and how there was a disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. So if you were white, you used powder cocaine, that was a 100-to-1 difference between the ratio of if you use crack cocaine to powder cocaine. That all what drove the criminal justice system. But here's what Kanye West did not say. He talked about the cuts to mental health. Who made those cuts? Ronald Wilson Reagan. Those were the massive cuts that were made between 1980 and 1988. So if you're going to make that particular point, then you must do so. What then happened was the cuts took place on the federal level, which then trickled down to the state level and then down to the county and city levels. And so you had folks who then said, mental illness, we don't care about that. We're going to have drastic cuts. It was Republican Ronald Reagan who drove that. It's very easy to Google. Something else Kanye did not mention. Press play.
Like Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero. And you made a Superman cape for me also as a guy that looks up to you, looks up to Ralph Lauren, looks up to American industry guys. Non-political, no bullshit. Put the beep on it, however you want to do it, 5 seconds delay, and just goes in and gets it done. Right now, you gave me the heart to go to Adidas because at Adidas, when I went in 2015, we were a $14 billion company losing $2 billion a year. Now now we have a $38 billion market cap. It's called the Yeezy effect. And I went to Casper. We had a meeting in Chicago. And I said, you have to bring manufacturing onshore, not even shore, into the core. It's not about the borders, the core of Adidas. And Chicago is the core of Middle America. And we have to make Middle America strong. So I had the balls, because I had enough balls to put on this hat. I mean, this Adidas thing made me a billionaire, and I could have lost $200 million walking away from that deal. But even with that, I knew it was more important for me to take the chance of walking away from that deal than to have no fathers in Chicago with no homes. And when we do have prison reformation, because it's habilitation, not rehabilitation, because we didn't have the abilities in the first place. We never had anyone that taught us. We didn't teach us. Exactly. We had no one that taught us, right? So it's more important than any specific deal, anything, that we bring jobs into America.
Stop right
and
there.
That we.
Kanye West talked about the value of Adidas. Go to my iPad, please. According to this breakdown here, the brand value of Adidas in 2015 was $6.2 billion, and then it was in 2007 it was $7.9 billion. Not quite sure where he got the $14 billion and $38 billion from. So the second thing is, when you talk about what Kanye West just said, did you just hear him say prison reparations? So is Kanye West saying that he is supportive of the United States providing reparations to African Americans? If so, he might want to further explain that. He talked about the need for jobs as well. Of course, the fundamental problem with violence in Chicago is not the issue of guns. It's actually jobs and education, which actually has been a problem for the last 70 to 80 years, because that's all as a result of Jim Crow. Chicago is called one of the most segregated cities in the United States. Folks might not want to talk about 1983, when Congressman Harold Washington was running for mayor, and when Walter Mondale came to Chicago to campaign with him on the north side, they bombed his car with eggs, attacking Harold Washington and Walter Mondale, because white folks in Chicago did not want to see a black man to become mayor of the city. Why? Because he would be in control of those resources. You don't want to talk about the political folks on the city council, Ed Verdoliak and others, who said we're going to stop Harold Washington from doing anything while he is mayor of Chicago. See, those are things that Kanye West somehow does not want to mention. And so when you talk about bringing jobs back to Chicago, well, then I'm trying to understand, Kanye, then what is the person across from you doing about that? Because Donald Trump has never presented a plan for Chicago. Just so y'all know, I've been at 2 of the 3 meetings he's had with television anchors. There's only one person who was in that room who has ever asked Donald Trump about Chicago and his plan for Chicago. And you're looking at him. And do you know what he said? My plan is strength. That was the word that he used. Now, it was an off-the-record meeting, so I decided to go ahead and tell you exactly what took place. Because, see, what I can't stand is to continue lying about, let's do something about Chicago, when you were asked directly by me, what is your plan for Chicago? And the answer was strength. That was the answer. Now, maybe he's thinking Kanye gets power from wearing that red hat. Somehow that's his cape. But the reality is, strength is a word. It's not a plan. Press play.
Provide a transition with mental health and the American education curriculum that Jim has worked on. Larry Hoover also has a curriculum that he's worked on. We have Montessori curriculums that we worked on. WeWorks has a beautiful curriculum. The Waldorf establishment has a curriculum. We have meditation. There's a lot of things affecting our mental health that makes us do crazy things, that puts us back into that trap door called the 13th Amendment. I did say abolish with the hat on, because why would you keep something around that's a trap door? If you build in a floor, the Constitution is the base of our industry, right? Of our country, of our company. Would you build a trap door that if you mess up and you accidentally, something happens, you fall and you end up next to the Unabomber?
Come back to me. Okay, here's a piece from February 2018 from the Mental Health America, how Trump's budget will affect people with mental health conditions. What it says in Donald Trump's budget, in fiscal year 2019, the budget request was $68.4 billion from the Department of Health and Human Services, which is a $17.9 billion or 21% decrease from the 2017 levels. That means that Kanye West is talking about and ranting about the importance of mental health, yet the person sitting across from him, who is smiling at him and happy with him wearing a Make America Great Again hat, proposed to cut mental health budget by $17.9 billion or 21%. Press play.
got to remove all that trapdoor out of the relationship. The four gentlemen that wrote the 13th Amendment, and I think the way the universe works, it's perfect. We don't have 13 floors, do we? You know, so the four gentlemen that wrote the 13th Amendment didn't look like the people they were amending. Also, at that point, it was illegal for blacks to read, or African Americans to read. And so that meant if you actually read the amendment, you get locked up and turned to a slave. Again, so what I think is we don't need sentences, we need pardons. We need to talk to people. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I was connected with a neuropsychologist that works with the athletes in the NBA and the NFL. And he looked at my brain. It's equal on 3 parts. I'm going to go ahead, drop some bombs for you. 98 percentile IQ test. I had a 75 percentile of all human beings, but it was counting 8 numbers backwards after it was repeating. So I'm going to work on that one. The other one's 98% Tesla, Freud. You know, so he said that I actually wasn't bipolar. I had sleep deprivation, which could cause dementia 10 to 20 years from now, where I wouldn't even remember my son's name. So all this power that I got, and I'm taking my son to the Sox game and all that, I wouldn't be able to remember his name from a misdiagnosis. And what we need is we can empower the pharmaceuticals and make more money. That's one thing. I've never stepped into a situation where I didn't make people more money. So we can empower pharmaceuticals, we can empower our industries, we can empower our factories, we can bring not only Adidas on shore, we can bring Foxconn. It's set up a factory in, I think, Minnesota, 53,000.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin. They have 4,000 jobs, people making $53,000 a year. And one of the things we got to set is Ford to have the highest design, the dopest cars, the most amazing. I don't really say dope. I don't say negative words and try to flip them. We just say positive, lovely, divine, universal words. So the flyest, freshest, most amazing car. And what we want to start with is, I brought a gift with me right here.
Okay, y'all can, first of all, y'all can advance it past the I-plane, because I want to pick it up from there. So let me do a couple of things. He talked about the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865. First of all, we do know, of course, the 245 years of slavery, it was illegal for black folks to know how to read. The 13th Amendment was one of the Reconstruction Amendments. It was the first Reconstruction Amendments. There were 3, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And what he's talking about is that slavery is in the Constitution because it is allowed in the prison system. Kanye then says, well, we need to have pardons. If the person who is sitting across from the table actually has not done a significant number of pardons. He criticized the pardons of President Barack Obama of folks who were nonviolent offenders. And so you can rant on and on about the importance of pardons when the person across from you is the one who isn't actually giving those pardons. Then he brings up Larry Hoover, somebody who is serving 6 life sentences for being a murderous gang member in Chicago. His lawyer is in there. You're going to hear in a second when the lawyer said, well, yeah, I mean, he's accused of doing this behind the bars, but even if he did, he should be out. You might want to ask the folks in Chicago about that. But here's the other deal. You heard Kanye talk about, oh, my God, Ford needs to have the dopest designs. Henry, go to my iPad, please. Folks, because of the Donald Trump tariffs, Ford prepared to mass layoffs after losing $1 billion to Donald Trump's trade tariffs. A little hard, Kanye, for Ford to do what you say they should be doing when Donald Trump's tariffs have cost them $1 billion. See, this is what happens when you go into the Oval Office and you just start talking and then you just start pulling stuff out your ass and you don't actually have facts or details to back it up. Press play.
Everything in China and not in America, then we're cheating on our country. And we're putting people in positions to have to do illegal things to end up in the cheapest factory ever, the prison system.
I'll tell you what, that was pretty impressive. You know, I hate to say this, Jim. Do you want to say something? What do you do after that?
You like me to say one word?
Please, please.
If he doesn't look good, we don't look good.
Yeah. Great, right?
That's right.
Isn't that a great statement?
Yes, it is.
It's so true.
Makes a lot of sense.
Come back to me.
Yeah, that's a country.
He talked about, of course, China. He talked about, of course, bringing jobs back to America. This is who is sitting in the Oval Office wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Henry, go to my iPad. some MAGA hats made in China may increase in price because of tariffs. I wonder if Kanye West actually looked at the tag on his hat to see if the hat was made in the United States or made in China. How stupid can you be to complain about jobs should be coming back from China to America, and how proud you are wearing, making it feel like you are Superman, putting on a Make America Great Again hat, fool, when a lot of the hats are made in China. Press play.
I've never seen Jim Brown impressed before. He was impressed. That's true. That statement is amazing, huh?
Yeah.
I want to tell you, it's great to have you guys with us. And we're going to go in, we're going to have some lunch. That was quite something. That was quite something.
That was from the soul.
Yeah,
Can I just ask a quick question?
really, very interesting. Yes, yeah, please.
So you had said of President Bush that he doesn't care about black people, and you've heard some people say that about this president. How do you respond to that? What do you make of that?
I think we need to care about all people. And I believe that when I went on to NBC, I was very emotional, and I was programmed to think from a victimized mentality, a welfare mentality. I think that with blacks and African Americans, we really get caught up in the idea of racism over the idea of industry. We say if people don't have land, they settle for brands. We want Polo Sport and Obama again. We want a brand more than we want land, because we haven't known how it feels to actually have our own land and have ownership of our own blocks.
Stop,
so when you don't
please.
have ownership,
We don't know what it feels like to have ownership of our own blocks. Kanye, you might want to go look up Rosewood to see what black people own. You might want to go look up, of course, Wall Street near Tulsa to understand that. You might want to go look at those black towns that black people created in North Carolina and Virginia. The reality, Kanye, is after slavery, after the Civil War, black folks who were not given land, who were not given money, who were not given horses, who were not given anything, actually put their meager resources together to actually create their own communities, buy their own land, open their own stores. That is what happened. But what you need to quite understand, Kanye, is because of systemic racism and white supremacy in this country, black land was stolen from African Americans. In fact, you had individuals when black folks dared to even speak out about voting. Then they said, we're not going to extend you any credit when it came to the store in town. So therefore, they couldn't even buy any goods to actually farm their own land, which forced them out to give up their land. There were black people who were forced out of Mississippi, of Alabama, of Georgia, of Tennessee, of Arkansas due to racism, and they literally packed their families up from those places and left the land because white folks said, how dare you stand up for your rights? And so please don't sit in the Oval Office and dare say, Kanye, that black people have never actually owned anything when we have undeniable facts of black people owning land, owning stores, owning those things. In fact, when you also begin to look at the details in terms of what we've done those things, but you somehow keep saying that racism is a figment of our imagination, and we just keep focusing on that whole thing and how you have been able to do these amazing things. You could not do a damn thing if Harry Belafonte didn't do it, if Paul Robeson didn't do it, if Sidney Poitier didn't do it, if Berry Gordy didn't do it. Those were the people who took the daggers of Jim Crow, who took the indignity of not being able to walk through the front door and have to walk through the back door to allow you to be able to do what you do in music. Don't you dare act as if what they endured, somehow they were weak and somehow you were so much stronger when they paved the way for you to be able to do what you did. Press play.
Then it's all about how something looks. It's about the patina. It's not about the soil. It's not about the core. So we focus more on, is somebody wearing something? Did someone disrespect me, so I gotta shoot him? Or the idea of someone being racist. You know, we talk about police murders, which we definitely have to discuss, and we have to bring nobility to the police officers and make them, because police officers are just like us. But there's this whole hate building, right? And that's a major thing about racial tension. And we also, as black people, we have to take a responsibility for what we're doing. We we kill each other more than police officers. And that's not saying that the police officer is not an issue, because they are in a position of power. But sometimes they're in placement of law enforcement. They need to be law power. It's force versus power. You shouldn't have to force people to do that. So a lot of times a police officer is sitting there, they're being forced to do this and forced to do that block, and then they force somebody into something and force something. We have to release the love throughout the entire country and give opportunities. A lot of times it's just the overall lack of reparations that we, at any given point, we say, oh, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist. So we don't have the reparations, but we have the 13th Amendment. We got to open up the whole conversation. So, and that's a move. One of the moves.
Again, I'm just trying to understand here. So you talked about opening up the love with police departments. Is this not the same city where he's from, where you just saw Jason Van Dyke, who was convicted of second-degree murder in the case of Laquan McDonald for shooting him, lying by saying Laquan McDonald was charging him? Is this the same city where you have a black cop right now who is on trial for being an absolute thug for shaking folks down? Is this the same city in the Laquan McDonald case where several cops erased the video at the Burger King and lied in their testimony, lied in the report? Is this the same city of Chicago where a judge said there were 8 cops who lied on the witness stand? They were flat out lying, and he busted them and reported them, yet the Civilian Oversight Board did not move on those cops. Are you also talking about the same Donald Trump sitting across from you who just stood before police and said that he supported stop and frisk, even though it is a racist policy? We should talk about racism, Kanye, but Donald Trump actually said supporting racist policy. And not only that, is this the same person you're sitting across from who Jeff Sessions is Attorney General, who is opposing the consent decree in your city of Chicago, which is designed to force these cops not to use of force, yet you are talking about the whole issue of enforcement and power? Sounds to me like they have all of the power in Chicago, Kanye. The person you're sitting across from is actually advocating and pushing policies that are completely 180 degrees different than what you're saying in your rant. Press play.
What I love that liberals tried to do, the liberal would try to control a black person through the concept of racism, because they know that we are very proud, emotional people. So when I said I like Trump to like someone that's liberal, they'll say, oh, but he's racist. You think racism can control me? Oh, that don't stop me. That's an invisible wall.
But you don't think you reject those who say he's racist?
You have one question, we're going to go to another question.
Okay.
I answered your question. I don't answer questions in simple sound bites. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it. You better play 4D chess with me like it's Minority Report, because it ain't that simple. It's complex.
Mr. President.
Actually, Kanye, it is real simple. Just like you, real simple. Press play.
I'm from the Chicago Sun-Times, so I would like to know what you would like to ask President Trump to do for Chicago. You're here to talk about crime in Chicago.
The thing that the head of the police and Mike Sachs met with me last night at the Soho House about was, we feel that stop and frisk does not help the relationships in the city. And everyone that knew I was coming here said, ask about stop and frisk. That's the number one thing that we're having this conversation about. Another thing is opening up industries, and we've got to get some tax breaks because we're making we got a speed factory in Atlanta, but the shoes are costing us $300, so it's costing us too much to make things. So we need some prototypes here so we can get people back working, so China can't just beat us and Vietnam can't beat us. You got Levi's, the greatest jeans company in the world, making their jeans in Vietnam. So we're going to need to get a few breaks to be able to have some places in my hometown of Chicago and the 2.7 million to the 9 million surrounding suburbs where we can create some factories. Now, I think it would be cool for them to be Trump factories because he's a master of industry. He's a builder. And I think it would be cool to have Yeezy ideation centers, which would be a mix of education that empowers people and gives them modern information. Like sometimes people say, this kid has ADD, this kid has ADD. He don't have ADD, school is boring. It was boring, it's not as exciting as this. We have to make it more exciting, we have to mix curriculums. You play basketball while you're doing math. You learn about music while you meditate in the morning. We have to instate mental health and art programs back into the city. So those are, and also Larry Hoover is an example of a man that was turning his life around. And as soon as he tried to turn his life around, they hit him with 6 life sentences. So I believe you say don't tear down the statues. Larry Hoover is a living statue. He's a beacon for us that needs to see his family, that needs to go out and represent. When you have a block leader on every single block, they can own the block as their own. That's something I learned from Jim Brown from A Mayor I Can. We need to put curriculums from people who really came from the streets, not people who are just trying to set us up to go into a work system or prison system that applies to what people are really going through, which Jim Brown has created.
What about gun violence with all the debate about the Second Amendment going on?
The problem is illegal guns. Illegal guns is the problem, not legal guns. We have the right to bear arms.
President Trump has said that he favors stop and frisk. Are you guys going to be discussing that? Do you think you can change his mind?
Yeah, we're gonna discuss. I didn't mean to put you on blast like that, bro. But it's definitely.
I'm open-minded. I'm here.
Yeah.
Come back.
Mr. President, would you like him to speak up?
Come back. Oh, I didn't mean to put you on blast, bro. Do you realize that just 2 days ago he gave a damn speech in Chicago, touting stop and frisk, saying it should be national policy? And now, oh, I'm open. No, he's not. You're getting played, Kanye. Oh, by the way, great rant about education. And you know, you're absolutely right. We should have music back in schools and arts back in school. Here we go to my iPad. The Trump administration 2019 budget proposing a decrease of $3.7 billion in the Department of Education. Looks like Donald Trump ain't really down with you. But also, Kanye, while you also having your conversation, talk about how the Trump administration is allowing for-profit universities back into the door and basically stealing money from students. It's amazing what happens when you do not read or watch this show. Press play.
One of your rallies.
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie. Smart. He gets it. These two guys, Jim Brown, he's been doing this for a long time.
Is this a future presidential candidate?
Could very well be.
Only after.
Could very well be. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
We have a good, and the thing is, let's stop worrying about the future. All we really have is today. We just have today, over and over and over again, the eternal return, the hero's journey. And Trump is on his hero's journey right now. And he might not have expected to have a crazy motherfucker like Kanye West run up and support. But best believe, we are going to make America great. Now, the thing is, another thing is black people have an issue with the word again. And I believe my feeling from that is because I'm going to go all the way Sigmund with it, because time is a myth. All we have is now, all we have is today. So the word again, it doesn't hurt us because of the idea of racism and slavery and different things. It hurts us because we need to focus on who we are now, today. I believe. So I actually brought some hats in that have a bit of a transition. I'm not trying to put you up on the spot a little bit. I made a hat that says Make America Great. Just that. But I would love to see at the Super Bowl, Trump wearing the Make America Great hat, Colin wearing the Make America Great, and showing that we can bend a bit on this side, we can bend a bit on this side, and we can learn how to be malleable in the infinite universe that we are and the loving beings that we are, that we don't have to stick to all traditions. And we aren't a side. We are one unit. We are one country. We are one moment in history and time. We might have been here before, but right now, we're here together, and our greatest value that people have are other people. And we need to stop working on red and blue. It's like a gang again.
You're in the Oval Office.
Okay.
How does it feel to be in the Oval Office?
Oh, it is good energy in this.
Isn't it good energy?
It's good energy.
It's a great place. Jim, how do you feel?
I feel good.
Yeah.
I truly feel good. I thank you, too.
You're so respected. And what Kanye's doing has been incredible. All over the world they're talking about this. And I have to tell you, I had important meetings today with senators and with everything. Nobody cared. They wanted this meeting. This is the meeting. Is that right? I can say that to John. No, the others were good, right? But this is what they want.
Maybe only you would be here.
Well, it's my honor, Jim. I want to tell you, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. Long time. And nobody like you. Nobody like you. No athlete like you.
Well, you know why I'm here? I'm here to serve.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm here to contribute.
You know, that's always been the way Jim has been for a long time. And he
Come
just
back.
wanted to help. And
I'm here to serve. I'm here to contribute. I'm not here to ask for anything. How in the hell can you sit next to somebody who just talked about mental health, who talked about high incarceration, who talked about violence, who talked about the need for all of these things in our schools? Every single thing Kanye West said, the person sitting across from him stands against. And then the one time in the meeting where Kanye actually was challenging something he said, he apologized. Oh, I didn't mean to put you on blast, boss. That's actually what he did. Now, if you're going to sit before the President of the United States, Jim Brown, and Kanye West, and again, I got no problem with you wearing a Make America Great Again hat. 94% black women voted for Hillary Clinton, which means 6% of black women vote for Donald Trump. Okay? 82% of black men voted for Hillary Clinton, which means the mother dudes voted for Donald Trump. So, and it also be clear, we know black conservatives, all right? It ain't like we have never met a black Republican or a black conservative. But I simply have one requirement. And if you sit before the President of the United States and in the Oval Office, at least go in there with a set of facts and don't go in there looking like and sound like a fool, just saying we need this. I love this man. I'm going to give him a hug when he stands in opposition to everything you just talked about. You can't sit here and go to the Oval Office and call for the release of Larry Hoover, serving 6 life sentences, when the very man you're sitting across won't even release a brother who was arrested in jail for a small amount of marijuana. Press play.
it's something special. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I guess just what do you feel about stop and frisk? Are you gonna?
Well, we're going to look at it. I'm open to everything. Hey, look, I think it's a shame what's happening in Chicago.
What else can be done?
I'm in Chicago a lot, too. I have nice things in Chicago. You know that, right? And I hate to see what's happening. They're having the numbers of people being shot and killed, and it's not for this country. So they have to do something, and I am totally open. If we can do it a different way, Kanye, I'm totally open. But they have to do, I mean, we all agree they have to do something, that's for sure.
Is it a law enforcement issue, a legislation?
Well, maybe it's a combination of both. Yeah, I guess it is, but I think it's probably a combination of both. And it's also a respect issue. They respect this guy, they respect this guy. That's a big thing. Right now, they're not respecting, let's say, your mayor or let's say your leadership in Chicago, but certainly it shouldn't be happening. What's going on there should not be happening. Steve, go ahead. Honestly, from our standpoint, this was just set up to be a lunch of two people that I like, and I guess they like me. And we're gonna have lunch. We're gonna talk.
You said, I guess you know I love you.
I know. But I don't want to put you in that spot. But
no, I'm standing in that spot. I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here.
That's really nice. And that's from the heart. I didn't want to put you in that position.
I love this guy right here. Let me say it again. I got no problem if a person says, I want to support Donald Trump. What my problem is when you lay out a litany of issues and the guy sitting across from you stands in complete opposition in policy, in who he appoints, in his agenda, and when he sits there and says they've got to do something about it. I thought when you campaigned in your speech in Cleveland, you said only one person can fix this. And you mentioned Chicago. Oh, I was in the arena when you did. We now are in September. No, we're in October 2018. You got in January 2017, and you actually have no plan. Do you know why Kanye has no plan? Because when I asked him about it, he said, my plan is strength. Then he said it's respect. Who should respect? Should gang members in Chicago be respecting the cops? Okay. But you just had Larry Hoover's attorney sitting right across from you in the Oval Office, who was the leader of one of the most violent gangs in Chicago. I'm just trying to understand, which is it? A lot of y'all out there probably will say, Roland, why'd you waste your time on Kanye? I didn't waste my time on Kanye. This whole discussion right here has been about Trump. See, Trump wanted that. See, Trump wanted the cable networks to show you the circus. What he also knew is that these other journalists were not going to dissect what was said. They were going to focus on, again, the shiny object. I wanted all of you to understand everything Kanye said and then get the facts of what he said and then show you the juxtaposition of him sitting there saying, I love this guy in his hat, yet the guy he loves has policies that are in complete opposition to everything he said in the meeting. Last point, Kanye West said that we as black people should only be concerned about today. We should not be concerned about what happened before. See, here's the problem, Kanye. You can live anywhere you want to. But redlining actually still impacts black people today. So what happened yesterday impacts today. We do know that all these laws, you sat there and just railed about the 13th Amendment and how, it's oppressing us and we need prisoner reparations. Yet we do know that there are laws right now that are denying people of color, especially black people, the right to vote because they serve time in prison, and laws dating back to the 1800s and the early 1900s, which means, Kanye, that things that were passed then impact us today. When we begin to talk about any number of other things, we can still talk about education. You still have people who are still fighting Brown versus Board of Education, which came in 1954. Brown 2 came in 1955. And here we are in 2018. But you somehow say we should not be concerned about what happened yesterday. We should only be concerned about today. Kanye, you can't sit in the Oval Office and talk about the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865, and then say we should not be concerned about yesterday and only be concerned about today. If that's the case, then we shouldn't be concerned about the 13th Amendment. Why? Because it was ratified in 1865. You don't even understand what you're saying. You're even contradicting yourself. Welcome to my panel, Amari Faulkner, a business development strategist and adjunct professor, Georgetown University. We have, of course, Greg Carr, chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. A. Scott Bolden, attorney, former chair of the D.C. Democratic Party. Gentlemen, I'll throw it all out to you. Again, I could have easily ignored Kanye, easily ignored all the things he had to say, but I feel it was important for somebody to break down facts to show you, again, how hypocritical he was, saying one thing and then sitting across the table with a smug look on his face, knowing all the cameras were there and knowing the media was going to cover all things Kanye said, and nobody was going to offer you the truth about Trump's policies.
I think that you did the nation a service, brother, by doing that. As far as I'm concerned, I think about his late mother. I was rereading her book, Raising Kanye, Dr. Donda West, who taught African-American literature at Morris Brown College and taught at Chicago State. And another ancestor must be sick to her heart to see a son who is so clearly mentally challenged, who's clearly got some health challenges, I would say, really just dissemble like that. The only other thing I would add is, I think that video, just watch it as one piece. That's a beautiful example of mental illness. Two mentally ill people talking to each other as if they don't both need severe intervention.
Yeah, it was. I would probably say somewhat of the opposite. I think she would look down and be very proud of her son. And the reason why is he's sitting at the table. And I totally understand what you mean in regards to facts. But you're Roland Martin. I've been watching you on television probably for the last, 2 decades. You have the facts. That's your profession. Kanye West is an entertainer.
He was raised on 2 college campuses.
Here's why I will not let him be an entertainer off the hook.
That's right.
And
I.C. Davis was an entertainer. Ruby Dee was an entertainer.
Right.
Dick Gregory was an entertainer.
Right.
Harry Belafonte is an entertainer. Paul Robeson was an entertainer. Sidney Poitier is an entertainer. John Legend is an entertainer. Lettucey is an entertainer. Common is an entertainer.
Yeah,
Kerry Washington is an entertainer.
That's right.
Erica Ash is an entertainer. I can go on and on and on and name you. Jeffrey Wright is an entertainer. Hold on 1 second, I'm not done. Don Cheadle is an entertainer. I can go on and on and on. These are individuals who at least will attempt to read.
And his mother was an academic. He was raised on
This is not a guy who.
Come on.
This guy, this is a guy whose mama was a college professor.
And took him to class.
Bruh, I mean, you let them off the hook.
No, something's wrong with that
man. Off the hook. What I'm trying to say is that what I saw is a person that's sitting at the table. He brought up some very important issues to the President of the United States.
No.
The President of the United States talked, to your point, in Chicago about stop and frisk, and he said that wouldn't probably be good for the community.
What?
I think the stop and frisk.
Who said that?
Kanye said that.
Right.
He said it probably
But then he
wouldn't be good.
said, oh, I'm sorry to put you on blast.
Roland.
Here's my whole point. When you at the table, Kanye was not talking to him.
Right.
Kanye was talking to the cameras. At no point did Kanye say, Mr. President, in your budget, you're cutting mental health. Restore it. Mr. President, you're cutting education. Restore it. Mr. President, you came to my city 2 days ago and declared stop and frisk should be national policy. That, sir, is wrong. I'm here to tell you you should rescind that.
Roland, that's the most I've ever heard Kanye West talk before in my life. But let me.
Well, actually, I've heard him talk longer than that, and I still didn't hear it.
You gave over almost 30 minutes of your show to watch that. What I'm trying to say is, when I look at that, you can look at other young men around this country, other young black men in Chicago that may have similar dreams to Kanye, that you can actually make it to the point that you're in the Oval Office. I like this point. I like the point he made, and regardless of how he felt, and Jim Brown, how they felt in the Oval Office.
But here's the deal, though.
I like those.
You can like how they felt in the Oval Office.
Their opinion.
But if, first of all, you can have your opinion. But when I'm opposite the very man who has policies that are completely opposite of what I'm advocating, and I'm just happy to be there.
Which is your opinion? My point is...
No, hold on. That's not opinion.
The entire segment, Roland, the entire segment was about you being right and him being wrong.
No, stop.
That's what it was all about.
Here's where you're wrong. My segment was about what the details are.
Right.
Can you refute a single detail I offered?
Yes.
Which one?
The details about... You didn't go into the fact about fathers being in the home and what that's doing to Chicago. You never talked once.
I'm sorry, hold. Did he bring that up?
Let's let me finish.
No. I said. Hold up. You said I offered. Let me roll back what you just said.
Did you talk about
hold on 1 second.
That a former president
is from
Chicago?
Hold on 1 second.
His plan
1 second.
To fix Chicago?
1 second. You just said you offered your opinion what Kanye West said. I said I offered detailed facts to what he said. I then asked you to refute a single fact I laid out. You pivoted, because you can't do it, to something else. Now, I'm going to ask you again. I want you to refute a single fact I laid out.
Let me give you an example. When you went to Ford's, when you did your one Google search and probably went to the first article you saw on Google.
No, actually, I saw it 3 days ago when Ford actually put it out there.
Right. But my
didn't lose $1 billion.
But my point is, he mentioned about Ford having the best cars, had a vision. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
What's absolutely wrong with that?
But I laid out the context that while you're saying Ford should have these great designs, Ford also is losing $1 billion due to the man across from him's tariffs. So can you think about that potentially? Ford has an issue with being able to do that. You can't have these great designs losing $1 billion, laying people off who look like me and you because of his tariffs.
When Henry Ford created the Model T, he lost a lot of money too.
Dude, you just missed what I just said.
Lost a lot of money.
You just missed what I said.
Because of the president.
I just said they're losing $1 billion because of the tariffs imposed by Trump. And you want to go to the Model T? Bro, come on,
Roland, everything you talked about, every single thing that you talked about, it does not, you always blame the president. My point is, every budget, when you mentioned the education budget, the education, charter schools, that's not all federal money. The federal government is not the single most funder of all these things.
Okay.
You missed the fact that we have nonprofits, we have community leaders, we have businesses.
Hold up, bro.
The federal government is not the end-all be-all.
Did you do your research?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Who created school choice as the Black Choice Initiative?
What does that have to do
No,
with
who created
I don't know the answer to that question.
Who created school choice is the Black Choice Initiative?
I don't have an answer to that.
You looking at them. Don't you dare try to educate me on charter schools. Bruh, what you did
I didn't say about charter schools.
No.
I didn't say
You just mentioned charter schools.
What I said was...
What I'm trying to educate you on is...
You say because of the budget, it's Trump.
No. That's not what I said.
That's not what I said.
What I said is, if you are going to come into the Oval Office, sitting across from the president and laying out your grand vision, I'm saying the same man who's sitting there smiling at you, looking at you, cutting education budget, cutting mental health, putting more people in prison, getting rid of consent decrees.
Putting more people in prison?
Did you not see the Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded the order of Eric Holder to telling prosecutors you should go after the full penalty when trying to convict people? Scott, you're a lawyer. Am I right or wrong?
And a former prosecutor, and he certainly did. And the other point that you made that made a lot of sense had to do with these orders regarding reforming the police department based on prior police brutality. You know, on one hand, Roland, you have a half hour to break it down. You're right about the reporters not being there, but the reporters weren't educated. But let me give you my take. I watched this, and it was cringeworthy. I thought about my father, who was a retired judge. I thought about every civil rights leader who's ever saved this country, who's challenged the presidents, whether it was Martin Luther King or Roy Wilkins. And the point that each of them made, while the presidents in their time agreed with them, each president, including Delano Roosevelt, for example, told Roy Wilkins, I agree with everything you've told me. Philip Randolph. I agree with everything you've said about the American Negro with housing, health care, family, and so forth and so on. Now make me do it.
Go make me do it.
Now go make me do it. But it was cringeworthy because I thought about what a minstrel series this was and the power of this press conference being broadcast by Trump and watching this popular rap star perform with ignorance and with submission and with all that we don't stand for as people of color. Now watch this. Now, white America looks at that and defines us.
The press corps laughs.
Listen to me. Defines us through the prism of what they saw with Kanye West. I am not Kanye West. I am educated. I'm at the top of the legal industry, and I don't represent that. And had I been at the White House, I would never go. But if I had been at the White House, Roland, I'm here to tell you that that litany of concerns would have been there. I would have read and researched and been prepared to challenge, and yet my invitation, if I wasn't allowed them to use me, that invitation would have been revoked.
And in fact, when I looked at social media and I saw all these conservatives, oh, that's right, Kanye is not on the plantation. He's speaking his mind. I know, and I've been knowing black conservatives my entire life, okay? Knowing them, friends with them, who embarrassed by that. It's not a question of do you have a seat at the table. The question is, what you saying when you at the table.
Exactly.
Now, if you have a seat at the table and you speaking gibberish and nonsense, well, then all you've done is wasted the seat at the table.
That's right.
Can I respond to something?
Go right ahead.
Scott, I agree with you. When I watched that, what I thought about my 91-year-old grandmother. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm a father of 4. I'm at the top of my field. I'm educated as well. I have 4 beautiful daughters that are home looking at me right now, that are proud of their father. And my point is, what I'm trying to say is that my great-grandmother, she would have been proud of the fact that she's proud of me now because I have a seat at the table. And to your point, when you say you wouldn't go to the White House, that's a cultural shift that we've seen in the past couple of years of, athletes and other entertainers that say they don't want a seat at the table. If Dr. Martin,
Hold on. You said athletes and entertainers. Who?
Can I finish?
No, name them.
We've had teams, the Golden State Warriors. We've had the Cleveland Cavaliers say that they will not go to the White House.
No. Hold on, stop. You just said athletes, entertainers, and a seat at the table. Going to the White House and holding a jersey is not a seat at the table. And in fact, you mentioned A. Philip Randolph. Let me go ahead and quote.
But can I finish my last
hold on. I'm going to quote the table.
Comment.
No, I'm going to quote the table so you have context.
Sure.
A. Philip Randolph said this.
Yes.
At the banquet table of nature, there are no reserved seats. You get what you can take, and you keep what you can hold. If you can't take anything, you won't get anything. If you can't hold anything, you won't keep anything. And you can't take anything without organization. Explain to me having a seat at the table and you got nothing to say when you lay all these things out and literally the person across from you stands in direct opposition to everything you just said.
My great-grandmother, she wasn't A. Philip Randolph, but she was born in 1901. She couldn't read or write, but she can count money like no one else. And she left a legacy for her children. And I respect that woman from Memphis. And what I would say is,
still ain't answer my question.
She always told me,
with the White House,
she always told me, you always take the seat at the table because you have an opportunity. If people would have, Martin Luther King Jr. would have said the same thing about Lyndon Johnson, who many have said he was a known and open racist. I'm not going to sit across the table from him and work for the betterment of black people.
Hold up, bro.
Because
do I need to play some audio tapes
of what?
Of what MLK said when he was in the room?
He had a seat at the table.
No.
He was in the room.
See, this is the mistake you keep making. No. You keep focusing on I had a seat. No.
Not enough.
The issue ain't the seat. It's what you're saying when you're in the seat. You can't sit here and say what MLK did because when he went into the room, first of all, he had a plan of action before he walked in.
Right.
Not only that, he knew the person across from him what his plan of action. Bruh,
if you think I'm trying to compare Kanye West,
well, hell, you brought MLK up.
But I am talking about the fact that during this process, the men to my right, we're chuckling and we're laughing. But someone has access in the seat at the table. Roland, you have been to the White House.
Hold up. And guess what? When I went to the White House and asked, what's your plan for Chicago?
And Roland, I would expect
what do you think? But
I would expect that from
what was his answer?
I would expect that from you.
What
do you think I expect that from Kanye West?
What did I say was his answer was?
Strength.
Roland, I said
No. I told you what his
you.
answer was. How offended are you when I asked the question, what's your plan for Chicago? And he went, strength.
I'm not offended by that.
Well, Donald Trump is.
Is that a plan?
No, it's not a plan. What was Barack Obama's or George Bush's plan for Chicago?
Let's just look at
what was Rahm Emanuel's plan?
Real quick.
The President Obama's.
So you fine with the president saying my plan is strength?
No. I am fine with the fact that President Trump seems to be doing something to address this issue.
Hold up.
Hold up. Really?
Hold up. No, 1 second. Where's the evidence?
Makes them right either.
This is the evidence.
No, 1 second. Where's the evidence?
This is the evidence. We are talking about it today. For the past 10 years.
That's the evidence?
For the past 10 years.
That's the evidence?
Bringing a spotlight.
Let me ask you a question. When has Donald Trump, since he's been president, even before when he was running, when did he go to Chicago to address the issues?
But you said while he was running?
Since he's been president, has Donald Trump gone to Chicago to specifically to community folks address the issue of violence in Chicago?
I haven't seen that yet, and that's something that I would say to the president if I was looking him dead in the face. I would like to see more
Maybe
action.
Kanye should have brought it up. Go ahead, Greg.
I'll just say very quickly, there are two ways for black people to get into the Oval Office. One is by invitation because they somehow can be used by the person sitting there.
Or exploited.
Well, or exploited. The other reason is because they're unavoidable.
No, you left the third one.
What's that third one?
They worked there.
Oh, no, that's true. Oh, yeah, the butlers. Yeah, no question. And in fact, what did Donald Trump say? The purpose of this meeting was lunch. But anyway, let's set that to the side. Your grandmother, your great-grandmother, 1901, Memphis, I'm from Nashville. About a year or 2 years after your great-grandmother was born, Booker T. Washington was invited to the White House by Theodore Roosevelt, an open racist. And the white press went apoplectic. The reason that he was invited was because Booker T. Washington was seen as the spokesperson for the entire race. He had been propped up by Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, so and so. It wasn't because Roosevelt somehow liked Booker T. Washington. He was the guy who was on the table to negotiate. Let's go back in time. Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass invited to the White House. Why? Because Lincoln needed Douglass to help him win the war. Let's come forward in time. Another racist, Woodrow Wilson. When Monroe Trotter went to the White House, He blasted Wilson so tough that Wilson literally threw him out of the White House.
Right.
Let's come forward a little bit more to Franklin Roosevelt and now talk about A. Randolph, who of course was there because he told Roosevelt, I'm going to shut Washington down with a march on Washington, which forced Roosevelt to sign Executive Order 8802, which opened up jobs in the war industry, which is why Kanye's people and people in Detroit and Oakland and Portland ended up in those cities, in those integrated jobs to get those jobs that are not there now because the industrialization collapsed them. But let's talk about, I want to talk about a woman, Mary McLeod Bethune. Ms. Bethune is in the Oval Office mostly through Eleanor Roosevelt because she said, when I come in here, I'm representing the entire race. I have an agenda. Kanye West was in that room for one purpose, to adorn Donald Trump's fever dream. That man has no business in the White House. He was there because Donald Trump could use him. He's a useful idiot. Jim Brown was in the room because Jim Brown hasn't criticized Donald Trump. But if you listen carefully what Jim Brown said, he said, I'm not asking for anything. We can criticize him on that. But when you look at his American stuff, you look at his attempt at gang intervention, he's an iconoclastic guy. But one thing's for sure, Jim Brown don't want nothing from Donald Trump. This other guy, Kanye West, he's a rapper, but if you look now, T.I. came out against him. The other hip-hop, Chance the Rapper from Chicago.
Actually, when they had the criminal justice reform summit there, they invited T.I. T.I. said, oh, I'll come if I could bring Farrakhan.
Come on, brother.
They didn't invite him. But hold on one second. You said your 91-year-old grandmother from Tennessee, huh?
Yeah.
Got you. You ever heard of Dorothy Cooper?
Uh-oh.
No, I haven't heard.
Dorothy Cooper was a 96-year-old black woman in Tennessee who in 2012 election couldn't vote. You know why she couldn't vote? Because Republicans passed their voter ID law, and she had to have her marriage certificate, which she could not find because she got married by 50-plus years earlier. Now, how would your grandmother feel about that when the person he's sitting across from supports voter suppression?
Oh, and that's a really good question.
How would you feel that right now in Georgia, that the Secretary of State in Georgia, Republican Brian Kemp, 1.4 million registrations he's thrown out. Right now, some 53,000 voter registrations he's holding up, 70% of them African-American, Republican. How would you feel about the Republican Secretary of State in Missouri, who just got admonished by a federal judge who ran a commercial telling folk they had to bring their voter ID to vote, and the federal judge said that was a lie? How do you feel about a conservative Supreme Court who just affirmed a voter ID initiative in North Dakota, which said that you had to have a physical address, not a P.O. box, when some several thousand Native Americans, the folks who were here before white folks, they live on the reservation, don't have a physical address. And so here you got Kanye, because I didn't hear anybody bring up voter suppression. I didn't hear anybody bring up Trump. Why are you supporting policies, and why is your party and McDaniel, the GOP chairwoman, why are you supporting efforts to deny black folks the right to vote? Why did your Attorney General Jeff Sessions go side with the side of Texas when 5 federal judges ruled that their voter ID initiative disenfranchised 600,000 people who look like you and me and Latinos? That's the same person he hugged with, I love you, guy. So you tell me this, if you're going to have a seat at the table, are you going to bring voter suppression up?
Well, we can start calling her Big Mama, because that's her name. We don't have to say great
that's
mama.
right there.
So we can start calling her Big Mama.
Big Mama.
But let me first say this. Let me first say this. I hope no one misconstrues the fact that I am trying to compare any of the men that you mentioned to Kanye West, because they're not. But let me tell you what Big Mama would have told me, and let me show you the example that she said. On voting day, she got away to the polls. She could not drive. She could not read. She could not write.
Did you skip what I said?
No. You asked me a question about what she would say. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Bruh, Dorothy Cooper wanted to go to the polls.
Can I finish?
Dorothy Cooper voted her entire life, but she was denied the right to vote because of Republican voter suppression efforts.
You asked me a question. I'm giving you the response of what my great-grandmother taught me.
But you didn't answer the question.
I'm answering the question. She made sure, and before anybody took her to the polls, months before, she made sure everything was buttoned up from her end, and she always told us.
Did you not just hear what I said? They said you need your marriage certificate.
Well,
the woman got married like 60 years earlier.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right. No,
do you know how many old?
We're not blaming
Do you know how many old people in Wisconsin,
Roland,
Mississippi, Alabama, Florida couldn't vote because they said I can't find my marriage
Or
certificate.
I don't have a birth certificate.
Roland, the point I'm
I was
well,
born at home.
Roland, the point I'm trying to make is we need to, just like Big Mama did, we need to focus the conversation on voter education so we can teach our young men and women the importance and the responsibility of your right to vote.
What we have
That's
to do
what we need
is
to do.
go after Republicans who say that you can't submit a certificate from the Bureau of Vital Statistics.
Right.
You need to submit the birth certificate with the raised seal. That's the only one we're going to accept. Bruh, don't try that. The reality is this
Don't
here.
try what?
If this woman, this sister, 96 years old,
Right.
she said, I don't know what my marriage certificate is. Their deal is if you don't have the raised seal, that's the only one we're going to accept. Why would they only say the raised seal? Even though when you go get a copy, you're getting it from the state. They said, no, you can't use that one. We want the raised seal.
But this is a
They don't
question.
have access to it.
No, hold on.
Are Are you implying, just out of curiosity, I've heard you talk about this issue on your segment or not, do you imply that these type of raised seals or photo ID and these laws are only just for black people?
No,
They only impact black people?
What I'm
Just
saying,
out of
is
curiosity.
the studies show disproportionately who they impact. What I'm showing you is that in Philadelphia in 2012, the head of the Pennsylvania Republican Party stood in front of the cameras and said Mitt Romney is going to win Pennsylvania because of voter ID. And what they did there was they said, okay, we'll offer you a free ID. Well, you know what the elderly had to do? The elderly had to go to the office, sign an affidavit to get the free ID, go back home, wait for it to be approved, go back to the office to pick up the voter ID, and then come back home. Now, how many elderly folks do you know have the ability to go from home, office, home, back office, home? Here's the reality. Republicans across this country, I can go down the line because I've been covering this, bruh, for the last decade, have systematically attacked.
And surgically.
In fact, we got a federal judge in North Carolina that they use laser-like precision to target black voters. Bruh, it's in the federal ruling that North Carolina Republican Party used laser-like precision to target black voters. So to answer your question, it's yes.
But look at Georgia, though. We haven't talked about Georgia yet. But look at the current Georgia law. The Georgia law, those 57,000 ballots that are kind of held up, and they say, well, they can file a provisional vote on November 6th. The law in Georgia is that, okay, so you fill out your voter registration card, right? If it doesn't match letter for letter, comma for comma, on some prior government forms that the individual may or may not have filled out, whether it's the government, whether you got married or divorced, if it doesn't match, we're tossing it.
So if I put Roland Martin and not Roland S. Martin, it gets tossed. In fact, since you asked for the evidence, are they specifically targeting black people?
I didn't ask you.
No, actually, you did. You said, am I? No, hold up. Let me roll it back. Are you implying that these efforts are targeting black people in North Carolina?
No.
They had email. No, hold up. That's what you. Is that not what you asked?
I asked you, do you think these issues are only targeted just to black people?
They are largely targeting us because you know why North Carolina? They got the emails. They asked the question, when do black people vote during early voting? They came back. 70% of black people vote in the first week of early voting. So you know what they did?
And they register on Sunday.
They said, we're going to slash.
They shut that down.
Hold up. Talking black people. They said, we're going to slash all early voting during the first 2 weeks, and we're only going to have one location in the whole county. They got the email. Then they said, we're going to get rid of voting on Sundays. I wonder why. Souls to the polls. the evidence is there. So this ain't even a debate. And this is certified Republican Party politics and then rules. I can go down the states. Iowa, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, Florida. We can go down the line. This is a systematic effort, and what I'm trying to tell you is the person Kanye was sitting across from got no problem with it because he understands it's going to help his party. And all I'm simply saying is if you're going to have a seat at the table, you might want to bring that up.
And right now, at this point, I think we have a seat at the table, and I think it's important. It's important that we focus on being proactive.
Wow.
Instead of being
Hold up. You know what? Hold up. We are being proactive. Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law filing lawsuits. NAACP Legal Defense Fund filing lawsuits. And
what I meant by that is the fact that we need to continue to push for policy to protect
elderly
people.
Hold up. Are you cool with voter suppression?
No, I'm not cool with
wrong?
voter suppression.
Are they wrong?
Who are they?
Is the Republican Party wrong for supporting voter suppression?
Roland, a Republican Party or Democratic Party cannot stop me from voting.
No, but you answered my question.
A Republican.
Hold up. Yes, they can.
I've been a vote. I'm not going to give away my.
Hold up. I'm gonna ask you.
He just went down 4 or 5 different states where voter suppression, where a federal court has determined that they surgically did it against black people.
5 federal judges.
And they can
we need
stop
to educate.
No. I'm gonna hold up. That's a nice pivot. I'm good at that too. But I'm gonna ask you a question again. Do you believe that the Republican Party in those states, they are specifically suppressing the vote?
Do I think? No, I do not think that they are specifically oppressing the vote.
So hold up. So even though a panel of federal judges wrote that was laser-like precision targeting black voters and overturned the voter ID law, you're saying that ruling was incorrect?
Roland, what I'm telling you is I do not believe that there are Republicans that are going down the books and saying, I don't want black people to vote. We're going to stop and make they're not going to be able to vote.
Oh, my God. Greg, go ahead. Hold up. Y'all go ahead. Hold up. I'm about to end. Hold up.
What makes Georgia worse, let me just say this. What makes Georgia worse is that the person, the Republican nominee for governor, is the Secretary of State who's pulling the ballots out and holding them and saying you can file a provisional.
And the consultant who gave to his campaign recommended getting rid of the 7 of the 9 voting sites in a county that was 70% black. But that just happened to be that just happened to be like kind of accidental, right?
That's a great message, Roland. I've been hearing you say this over and over every night.
No, it's fact.
Was this happening 8 years ago? Or
No, bro. Yes.
Oh, it has?
Bro, at 2008.
Were we talking about it?
Yes, we were.
Was the president talking about it?
Yes, he was.
What did he do about it?
Which one?
President Obama.
Yes, wait a minute.
What did he do about it?
Hold up. Since you want facts.
What did he do about it?
2012, when in Ohio, Republican-led county boards extended voting hours with Republican counties and cut voting hours in Democratic counties, it was the Obama administration, his campaign, who sued the Secretary of State, sued Ohio, took him to court, and the Secretary of State of Ohio admitted that was wrong. Now you got your facts. Go ahead, Scott. Bruh, don't throw something out, bruh, if you ain't got the facts.
My point, Roland,
Scott, go ahead. These are local issues?
And this is how I fight.
Oh, my God.
Actually, this is voting is a state issue.
Go on.
Voting is a state issue, which is why.
Especially if they go to the Voting Rights Act.
Well, this is exactly where I was going, Roland. Voting is a state issue, which is why it was Shelby County, Alabama versus Eric Holder, Attorney General of the United States. Why? Because they were trying to destroy the pre-clearance provision of the Voting Rights Act.
And the moment the Supreme Court threw it out,
under Obama, because
every single one of those southern states instituted massive voter suppression immediately.
Absolutely.
And I didn't say they waited 2 weeks.
No, they had the laws ready.
The next day.
Of the American Legislative.
Those were also Republican-led legislatures.
Right.
Just so you know.
What I would ask you, as a professor, do you not think it would be a great idea for us to use a show as such, when you have a seat at the table, to educate young black men, young black women, about the importance of voting?
That's actually I got a good answer.
They are suppressing our
votes.
Scott.
Let me give you a very basic. Today is Thursday. In my Tuesday morning class, I asked students. I said, "Who's from Florida? Who's from Georgia? Are you registered to vote? And what's the status of your absentee ballot if you're not going home?" You know what I heard? I heard a kid from Florida say he hadn't gotten his ballot yet. I heard 2 kids from Georgia say they haven't gotten their ballots yet. So to answer your question very directly, based on experience I had 48 hours ago, we're already beginning to see how they're going to try to steal this election. And I'm telling you, from students who are conscientious, Howard University registered thousands of students over the last couple of months. But I'm saying, and Georgetown was part of it. Some of those students, all the kids in D.C., American, George Washington.
My wife went to Howard Law, and she's been part of the process
what I'm saying is, not only do I agree with you, my little sample poll in the room began to reveal. And when they found out from each other, when they heard each other, they was like, "Oh, wait a minute, hold on. All those kids
they
in
start
there,
to act, right?
Scott,
because they already acted. They sent for their
Scott,
My point is when they didn't arrive, they started to act.
Scott,
at the state level, county
you'll see it at
level,
the table.
and even at the federal level, but at the state level,
Right.
which we are trying to have more African Americans in governorships, in the state houses that we lost. It makes no sense. We should always do voter education for our young people.
Which we have done.
And we continue to do it. We are experts at it,
Black
right?
folks real good at that.
But when we
getting
say,
them to the polls,
when we say and we
getting them
message,
to the polls,
they are suppressing our vote. I think that sends
exactly.
a horrible
So
message.
what?
Right?
Hold on, stop. No, Scott, stop.
Of course
hold
it does.
Bruh, you cannot sit here and say, when we say they are suppressing the vote, it's sending a horrible message. The horrible message is suppressing the vote. How is it that you somehow can't even articulate that? It's like you were scared to say that's wrong. You were scared. You were saying, well, we got to tell our folks. Here's the deal. Fact, there were literacy tests. There were poll tests. They have always put barriers in black folks' way. And you know what we did? We hurdled the barriers and still fought to bring the barriers down.
Right.
But, bruh, don't sit here and act like we can't fight to bring the barriers down when we got evidence, undeniable evidence, where they have been targeting us because they want to shave the voters off here and shave them off here and shave them off here. Undeniable empirical data, and your answer is, well, can we just teach our people to go ahead and just go ahead and register? Come on, Doc.
You say you don't believe it's happening.
My point is this.
Is it happening?
You're
Yes or
in
no?
denial. If you
Are
say
they
that,
are
you're
they
in denial.
are they making putting policies in
Just in
place
denial.
to suppress
want to own it.
folks from voting? Yes or no?
No one that I have met in the city of Memphis that I've talked to.
Oh, that's
people.
different.
I served overseas for 2.5 years.
Sure.
I had to do absentee voting.
Well, the military, sure.
I just transferred over from Tennessee to Virginia. It was an arduous process, but it was an arduous process that all Americans have to do, and it's our responsibility to understand those processes and help our youth and help elderly people.
That's why Septa McClark in South Carolina started the Citizenship Education Project. While the NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, and everybody else was suing at the Supreme Court level, they were teaching Septa McClark the Freedom Schools in Mississippi.
You
got to learn. But here's the question you can never answer, brother. How many bubbles in the bar of soap? There's no way to answer that question. In other words, when you put an impediment before that it's absurd, you're not saying that they're not trying to suppress the vote.
I'm not saying that poll taxes before the Voting Rights Act was signed.
But what Roland just explained you in Pennsylvania is the equivalent of a poll tax, brother. When an elder has to go back and forth several times who's on limited income, that's a poll tax.
Since you from Tennessee, I'm just gonna end it this way. Here, just go to my iPad. Democrats in Tennessee County allege voter suppression. The Tennessean, voter suppression in Tennessee should be on its way out. Tennessee Tribune, facts show voter ID laws limit turnout. Tennessee.gov, what ID is required when voting. Facing South, Tennessee students continue to fight against a discriminatory voter ID law. KnoxNews.com, voter suppression more destructive than rare fraud. Bruh, that's your state. And you had the nerve to sit here and say it's not existing? Bruh, come on. All of y'all, I appreciate y'all watching the show. Great conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to be broadcasting live from Bloomington, Illinois tomorrow, where I'll be speaking to the NAACP Freedom Fund dinner. Bottom line is here. The reason we have this show, the reason this is important, you're not going to have this level of conversation on cable news because they're going to go for the entertainment. We're going to go for the facts that give you the information to empower you as well. Support us at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. I will see you guys tomorrow. Holla!